Kate Ceberano, welcome to Australian Musician.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You're currently on your Australian Made tour, not only paying tribute to the legendary Australian Made concerts that happened in the 80s that you were involved with, but also performing Australian songs that have been an influence on you. I believe you played over 20 regional shows. You've done Sydney, and then this Friday you're doing Hamer Hall, the 19th. The next night you're doing Brisbane, and then Adelaide on the 11th of October. How long have you been thinking about
Yeah.
this concept and how much fun has it been?
Well, I think just to put it in the correct order of matter, I think I did about 30 odd regional gigs, which was like really uncommon. Um, you know that the only reason why a lot of artists don't get to do regional gigs like we'd like to is because it's cost prohibitive. I think the fact of Australia being as big as it is and the expense of flying equipment across the country these days and then driving the distances between each show. I personally needed to do this. Like we've been doing this, talking about doing this for over 15 years now. But for different reasons. And I guess because I was actually on a different tour as well. This tour was essential that I went out to the places that had made me and probably most likely made a lot of the Australian acts that were on the bill as well. Our lives were crafted on the stages everywhere across this country, RSLs and pubs and clubs and everything in between. And it just seemed ridiculous to not go out there and just like sew this thing together out there, or where as far as Townsville, Darwin, Cairns, WA, and then all the places in between, then Broken Hill. And so, I mean, it's a rare treat. And we don't have buses, you don't have those fancy American tour buses and sleepers and stuff like that. Like we do it like we did in 1989.
So going back to the original Australian Made concerts, 86, 87, first of all, what an amazing lineup that was with the models and In Excess to Vinyls, Jimmy Barnes, and of course I'm Talking. What are your most cherished memories about that tour?
I have to say, I have like a professional amnesia. In the beginnings of my career, because I was like 17 and 18, 19 when I'm Talking were put together, which was in itself, they were themselves quite an anomaly to what was happening on the scene. Um, I'd been listening to Australian Crawl, Sherbet, grew up on John Paul Young and all of Australian rock, Hush, Skyhooks. Actually, I had a lot to do with them as a teenager because Cheryl and I were on a television show together. I'm going back in order to bring you forward to, because I have to give you, I think, and a lot of people don't know this about me, that before I'm Talking at 17, I'd already had several bands before that I'd been a part of, and actually it had some decent success with as well. So that by the time I hit my strides as a 17-year-old or 18-year-old being invited to perform on a bill as big as this, it was the biggest thing I'd ever seen in my life, let alone been a part of. I mean, I'd rarely been on a plane. I had sung on albums and had done, backing vocals on the models. And I'd worked peripherally with Michael Hutchinson and In Excess. I hadn't really had much experience with Barnsey. Chrissy Amphlett was sort of like a punk sister who just couldn't tolerate anyone hanging around and watching her and studying her, which is essentially what I did as a kid. You sit in the wings and at 16 and you just sort of sit and watch, and she'd be like, oh, fuck off, Renee Gale was a bit the same too. Like, I think they found it, oh, and I understand this too, a little bit like that movie All About Eve. Do you know that film?
I know of it. I can't remember what went
The,
down in it.
the theming for it is sort of where a young ingenue sort of comes in and sort of watches avidly the way someone else has done it and then copies them and then sort of steals their gig a little bit.
Yeah.
So I could tell that I mean Chrissy was the queen of all things rock at the time, and Renee was the queen of all things rhythm and blues and soul. And I just didn't really know yet what I was. So I would ping back and forth across the genres, trying to work out who the hell I was, and kicked from post to post um, in the process. So to answer your question, I was so self-aware. I don't even remember a lot of what it was actually like being in the place and in the time. I was just so critically aware of myself and what I was saying, and did I sound stupid, and was I keeping my level of the deal up, and was I singing well, or was I, yeah. So it was a very, very intense time.
Yeah. Of course, the sad part about that series was that a lot of those people are no longer with us. Michael and Chrissy and Dave McComb and Chris Bailey and Greedy
James Floyd, yeah,
was it part of the idea of doing this to keep those names alive?
absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I felt like I just I'm confident about my own work and my life's career. I've had many I've switched across to many genres in an effort to understand more about myself and music, and I had refrained from doing a lot of covers gigs per se, you know, because I just didn't really feel that I was ready to interpret or step into someone. I think there's also a really kind of like a kind of a brutal truth to the fact with audiences. If they see you doing these things and they love you doing it, they kind of just want you to do that. It's like do Chrissy, you know, or um, and I'm all for it in a karaoke bar or something. I just didn't want to make my life's work out of that. And so at 40 years, when I was looking at the staging of it, and I also remembered that the reason why we sort of did it was because they said that Australian acts wouldn't fill stadiums, and so consequently there'd been none like it. There'd been no shows really like that before. My manager at the time was Ken West, so he went on to do the Big Day Out with Vivian Lee, and these things became like par for the course of the culture we live in today. But really, back then, this was really uncommon. And the thing I really respected about this one too, which is why I'm liking this tour, is that none of us had really anything in common. There were punk bands, there were funk bands, old, young bands. There were all male bands, all women, you know, and I feel that sometimes in contemporary cultures, there's this feeling that we must be put into like groups or something, and that you're only allowed to play with bands that are like you. And maybe it's because it's for financial reasons, it's more profitable getting one kind of audience only there. But I think with Australian Made, it was about getting all of Australia there, and that was the principal thing I wanted to honour in this tour. And you know, I do all of those bands, but yet I also do like Silverchair, and I do Wolf Mother and Bernard Fanning, and and actually in recent times I've been adding Sia and all of the women of my experience in music.
So, what's the starting point for interpreting other artists' songs? How do you approach it?
For me personally, it has to be based on an experience that I've had with the artist. um, because then I feel like I can offer the audience an insight to the times and where we were and what we were thinking and doing at the time, and how a conversation might feel between Renee and me. And now that she's no longer here, I can explain that story best by first of all demonstrating a song that she might have had a go at, and then discussing how we related to each other. Renee and I were actually really good friends, and I think that was an anomaly in itself too, because I think a lot of people didn't really feel loved by her, but I definitely felt a lot of love from Renee. She was like my Auntie Mame.
Yeah. The shows you've been doing, you have an incredible band. You have not one but two incredible guitarists, uh,
Yeah,
in Halloran and Hart, Darren Hart.
yeah.
What's it like having those guys with you?
It is powerful. Helen and Hearts are respectfully uh, giants in their skill set. Multi instrumentalists, both singers. They slay as lead guitarists, and yet they're both supporting each other in different ways through the show. Each of them swapping guitars, some of them playing bass at different times. Kathleen joins me on the keys. I swap and play the keys, and I'm on the drums for most of the set. So, and Hearts is really instrumental to making this trio possible. It was really, to start, it was an economical kind of concept, but then it's become actually that it's just become this perfect firmament for what I wanted to do, like what I wanted to say. I wanted to make sure that we could deliver the same sounds as the bands of the times. So all the stems, Darren does that all live, and it's being programmed on stage in front of people. And crowds are just losing their shit because they're seeing the process of putting these songs together. It's not like it's sort of, we're not like minimizing them into like some unplugged acoustic versions of, some of them might be, but that's, I've done it for story reasons, but mostly it's like full on recorded tracks, and we just fang it. We go pretty hard.
Yeah. And playing drums. How long's that been a thing on stage?
I went out on a tour once before where I played drums the whole tour. Actually, I played drums because I was a flamenco dancer for years, and I find rhythm and Sheila E. and various other drummers have always been, as percussionists, have always been a big influence on me because I feel percussion. I think the rhythm section in a singer is always really bound by rhythm and tone. The bass player and the drums seem to provide everything you need for voicing and syncopation as a singer. I think singing as a percussive instrument just sits right smack wedged in between drum and bass. Um, and so because of that, it wasn't that hard to imagine doing it. It just was trying to get people's agreement that they would feel confident about me doing it. Though, like I've had people say, "Oh, we won't book you," not now, but in the past. If Kate's on the drums, we won't book her, as if they wouldn't have confidence in that, which I understand that, but this is a bit different. This is like quite a little tough little trio. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it's an electronic kit that you're playing?
Mm. And it's primarily percussion, I'd like to say, because although I am I'm doing all the backbeats, the kick and bass, all the toms. I wanted to say kick and snare, and all. Well, anyway, you'd have to sort of see it to understand how it works. But it's the electronic kit is probably the greatest toy I think I've ever owned in my life. I I'm able to reproduce sounds and have the touch feel of a true instrument with its power and, the dynamic feeling of it. But it doesn't take me off of standing, or, I can be right up at the front of stage and standing equal to the band. We don't have to shape it so that I'm far off into the distance. We're very much like this kind of band in a box right in the front of an audience's face, and from the minute of the show it's very curated so that we are inviting people into this memory of ours, and then the minute we start it's just all about them. It's all about the audience. It's about them and how they're experiencing the journey. um I think it's a really good show. And I'm not, ordinarily, I'm like, hey, I'll let people discuss whether they like or hate it. But for me, it's probably the greatest career highlight for me because it ticks every box. I like the people. I like the fact that we can run it and we can tour it ourselves in two cars. It's like, it's efficient, but it's independent. It's loud and punk, and yet it's also personal and loving. It's all these things. It's just gorgeous.
Yeah. The last time I saw you play a show was out at Mornington,
Oh
uh,
yeah.
supporting Tina Arena. And one of my favorite parts of your show was the I'm Talking section. I imagine that's going down a treat at these shows.
Yeah, well, one of the things that was always for me, being I'm talking on the bill of Australian made, was we didn't quite have enough to support the way music was heading towards electronics and the marriage between Australian live rock and dance pop. I think we were on the very cusp, and I think in many ways, I think I'm talking is been neglected on the history of Australian music, because I just think people just would cock their heads and go, I don't really understand how that was,
Mm.
and yet we were touring and opening up for acts everywhere. Like it was, um, you'd open up for the Angels, and it didn't matter that you weren't anything like them. You could put it across with the same amount of energy, the Divinals, or pretty much anyone in Australia would have. I'm talking because they were aggressive and they were energetic. But the thing that I'm doing on tour, which I like, is I'm putting hunters and collectors in and around with that, bringing in the sounds of models and improvising in the same way that bands at that time were more likely to improvise. So there was spoken word, Michael Hutchinson. Well, Mark Seymour was is a great actor, actually. I don't know if you know that, but he's such a great actor, and the way he has written a lot of lyrics is quite often it's like a monologue, talking to a stranger. It's earthy, and so I get right into that character. When we do the I'm Talking break in the middle, I do all of the hits of I'm Talking, and then I wrap it up in sounds of the times with other bands that weren't on Australian Made, and it's a sort of heavy moment. I like it.
Yeah, I've still got my original copy
Love it.
there,
Love it.
signed,
Love it.
signed by you all.
Wow. That's so cool. Great artwork. I love that. I love that album.
What
I
do
don't
you,
know if you know that that album was one of the first in the world that was recorded on a digital console,
oh,
and that the console was still brand new to the format of recording in that way. So often during the recording, the producer would be calling back to UK or wherever the makers to confer with how the console was working and could they tweak certain things. And I mean, it was a brand new world.
yeah,
Uh, and recording was never ever going to be the same again after that. So it was kind of like the first of the first.
yeah. And Fred Marr was producer from Squiddy Politti.
Pretty Politti, yeah, that's right. And Dave Gamson had a little to do with us when we went to New York during the recording. Um, Dave Gamson, of course, went on to produce. I mean, he produced Michelle Nagaticello and a variety of other really incredible alternative funk acts, and but they were essentially producers. Like they were the deep cut. They were the people that were inventing new sounds, inventing the equipment to create them. A very, very important part of the band's sound.
Yeah. You've released a live album so people who
Yeah.
see the show can remember it and continue playing it. Was that just a recording of one show or a collection of performances?
It was primarily one show, actually. Yeah. We picked up a couple of tracks from a couple of the others on either side of it, but I'm pretty certain it was from Frankston, of all places to go to. I mean, I remember going down to Frankston actually as one of my first gigs with a band, my first band expose, and coming from Doncaster to Frankston felt like I'd traveled to the other side of the moon. It felt like 1,000 light years away. So, but Frankston these days has the most beautiful municipal theatre, and the place was just heaving with the most incredible audience. And so it was mostly we chose those tracks, not because of our prowess or lack of or whatever. Like we weren't like focusing on the quality of us, but more about how they were responding to the songs. And you can hear on the recording, because we wanted it to feel like the full concert, the audience was so engaged and they were so vocal and in contributing to the way the flow of the songs were happening, that it seemed irresistible not to put that one down as the base.
Yeah. What do you do in the last half hour before going on stage? Do you have routines or rituals?
Um, you'd be amazed. I think you're one of the first people who ask about that process. It's usually, like The most common question people ask me is, how do you come down? Really?
Yeah.
I mean, people ask me how to prepare, but they don't ask me what that feeling's like, that moment just before stage. And I can tell you it's so sublime and uncomfortable, that it's, you kind of want to spew and you sort of want to celebrate at the same time, because you know something's about to happen. You just don't know if it's going to be any good. And you have to prepare yourself for I guess, the engagement. And you're going to walk straight out there and you're going to present your piece of art to people. And you're going to know that the minute that it escapes from your body, it belongs to them. It's no longer within your control. It's actually theirs.
Yeah.
And the audience knows it too. And they look after you. You know, they kind of, it's almost like sort of like body surfing on songs. Like, you just have to throw yourself out there and hope that the other people are there to catch you.
Yeah. And is there a sense of relief when the band kicks in? You know the PA's working, the band's in time with each other, or is it just once you hit the stage, it's off you go?
Oh, look, I think that there's a sort of an element of chance, which is, it's a bit addictive, like that kind of, that fantastic sort of hopelessness you get when something's completely out of your control and you just go, okay, so you know what? If this happens, I'm going to just like relax and enjoy that. It's actually, do you know, the worst time of all is about 24 hours before the show is actually the worst. And my poor daughter, who just opened up for me in Sydney, I watched her preparing the night before to arrive in the afternoon the next day in the opener, and she's just was like green with terror, just bilious. You just like, you just don't think you're going to actually handle. And so by the time you get on stage, it's actually a relief. It's like, okay, well now, whatever happens, I've got to deal with it. I've no choice but to handle it. I can't do anything about it. It's out of my hands. But those 24, 48 hours before is just like, ooh.
You're actually not the first person to say that.
Really, yeah.
Adelita was saying she almost vomits every time she goes on stage, almost.
Yeah, and yet, you look at Adelita and you'd think, oh, but she's so confident and she's so sort of bravado, and she's got this incredible power, and she does. She has all of that. But the things that makes Adelita great, and possibly the things that make me a, a known artist, is that we always go for PB. You're not. It's only you're besting. So you're in a cutthroat competition with yourself,
Mm.
and you're asking more of yourself, and that's the thing that makes you ill. It's like you're choking on your own will. You've got this amazing, like Adelaide, I can tell, like she's like, I will do this. I'm getting out there. I'm going to do this, but I just don't know if I can. I don't know. It's so incredible to see that amazing Boudica, that kind of queen of war. She's so great. And yet she's so delicate backstage. We were both doing each other's makeup in one room in Sydney. And her hand or my hand was shaking, so it's one of us delivered each other's eye makeup, um, and it was sort of a kind of a relief to see that it's not just myself, that it has this feeling that, and the body is like it's like a brutal animal. If an animal, if you were to go and put the animal in front of an oncoming car, it would start to tremble and shake as well. And that's what the body bag is like. You put yourself out in front of people and you're like, oh, you can't breathe. And but at the same time, um, those adrenals and nerves are heightened in such a way that suddenly you can see farther, you can hear, and you can perceive audiences like a dolphin would. It's like sonar. You sort of like throw yourself out in the crowd and you're like, hey, I actually can feel that guy in the second row from the back, and he's really digging this gig. So you sort of like, I don't know, it's very deep. It's
Yeah.
cool.
Okay, so you've got a few more of these shows to go. Then you've got the Jimmy Barnes 40th anniversary
Yeah.
gigs. What's happening after that into 2026?
Well, I'll get to Jimmy first. It's it fills me with joy that I get to be on the bill again with Jimmy because we have been on bills together, but not like this. It's just like this is by his invitation, and um, his audience have traveled a big distance with him, and so he's basically inviting me to step up and he's sharing me, and I'm sharing the experience, and he's asking them to involve me in their experience, which they've been having this conversation for 40 years, you know. Um, so I feel like I'm in good voice and I'm strong and I think that they'll enjoy this particular set. And I think it will serve the Working Class Man Tour because just for exactly that reason, people know that both Jimmy and I have carved each other out of the same stone in the same venues in front of the same people. There's something very deeply honest about that. What you see is exactly who you made, like the audiences, you know. When it comes to on the other side of Jimmy's tours, it's likely I'll get out there and I'll get back in the studio and record because I've written a lot of songs. I did do a record with Steve Kilbey before lockdown, and which didn't really get much of a Guernsey because just the world, it seemed like the world was ending, and it seemed so trivial to release anything in the face of that kind of horror. And I love that album. I think that album's a really worthy album. So I might get back into that space, and I might even involve working with Steve again, or maybe I've got an idea for an album, and I think it's a strong idea, which I won't discuss right now, but it is a really earthy sort of rock album.
Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck with the remaining shows, and
Thank you.
thanks for joining us.
Oh, look, thank you always for your support and the way you celebrate Australian music. You're amazing. You are.
Thanks, Kate.
No worries.